Welcome back to Next Level Rides. Apparently you go out for a can of brake clean to good old Princess Auto and you walk out with mini dirt bike kit and a 6.5 horsepower motor. I don't know, maybe it's the kit at heart or whatever we're gonna call it, but I couldn't pass it up. So I ended up grabbing these two. It'll be a fun little project, a little bit of change of what you're normally used to seeing, but winter's still among us. So soon enough, it'll be gone and we can move on to the bigger four-wheeled projects. So stay tuned, we'll get at it. My fat fingers didn't end up hitting the record button, but this gives you an idea of what we're working with. So I ended up unboxing it. It's actually kind of neat. It came in its own little skeleton, we'll call it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tear it down. Looks like there's a couple of bolts holding it together. And then I'm gonna put it on the workbench and we're gonna get started on this. It's actually pretty neat. For the most part, it's actually already pre-assembled. So I really don't think this is gonna take a whole lot of time, but who knows? I mean, that might bite me in the ass, but let's get tearing it down. It's a lot bigger than I expected. Haha, that's what she said. Instructions. Oh, I guess that's for the front carrier. Probably don't need to put that in. All right, let's get the motor out of the way. Over there. It's weird, it has two fill plugs. All right, let's see what we got here. This looks like motor mount, idler, lubricated chain stuff. What is this? You get a tool kit? Oh, yes. What did I say about these zip ties? Okay, I don't trust these as far as I could throw them, which is a little bit far. Don't use cheap zip ties unless you want to lose a filling. Wow. If that isn't the cutest thing ever. 10, 12, 14. Look, Ma, I got a starter set. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, that's actually kind of neat. You could throw it in a car. All right, what's in here? I'm guessing bolts. Clutch. Okay, so this is gonna be the clutch for the engine so that it doesn't stall when it comes to a stop. So I don't know if it's gonna show up on camera. Usually there's a bit of assembly required, but this one is partially assembled. So you'll see the springs in there. So as it spins, if it spins and when it spins fast enough, it'll actually throw out weights typically. And once it spins fast enough, it'll usually throw arms or weights and it'll actually lock up. So then it'll actually start spinning the rear wheel. That's kind of neat. Is it one piece? It's like one piece. Oh, that's weird. That is super weird. Okay. It's a little bit different than I'm used to, but I don't think it'll be all that bad. Bearings seem okay. So my understanding is this will mount to the side of the engine. The shaft should go through that hole and we'll see. If you were wondering why I bought it, $335. Yeah, I'm a sucker for a deal. Bring it back. I am not reading the instructions. Not reading. What? Install the jack shaft assembly to the engine output shaft? Like this? What? Huh? What the hell is going on? Why is that tight in both directions? Okay, third time is charm apparently. All right, what is that? That's just heat shrink, okay. The 4 M8 bolt. It says these are 8.8. I don't think so. Oh, the jack shaft assembly. Oh, apparently this is the jack shaft assembly. What the hell? But it doesn't fit. What happens when it doesn't fit? Does it? No, it doesn't. Good start. Okay, so it's not fitting because of the heat shield right here. When in Rome. Something from China that fits bolt on. Look at that. Woo, damn. Bolt on. Look at that precise measurement. This is not a quality kit. Not even a little bit. Like, this one's not even lined up. Can't even get the bolt in. Yeah, that feels sketchy. So what are we gonna do? Send it home. Send it home. Good enough. All right, time for the clutch. Okay, so you'll have to take the keyway off. All right, just a little bit of anti-seize, nothing crazy. I love how in the instructions it says clutch bushing and it points in behind the clutch, so you have no idea what the f it's talking about. All right, so I used my caliper here. I measured that this was 19.5 mil and the inner diameter of the bushing was 18. So what I did is I used a step bit. So I clamped it in a vise, that's why it's a little bit ugly. Used a step bit and then cleaned it up with Scotch-Brite and seemed to have done the job. So let's get a little bit of lube on there. All this really does is just stand off the clutch. So if it's not exact, or if it's a little bit ugly, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not, you know, it's pretty close. It's within a fraction of a mil, I'd say. Yeah, pretty nice now. So that's how it's supposed to be, huh? Yeah, these Chinese tolerances leave a bit to be desired. It's close. I think it'll be all right. Zip it in. I don't know if I can trust these torque specs. Tighten the clutch bolt, 13 to 18 foot-pounds. Torqued. Install the chain with the master link. So on the chain, there should be a master link here. So what you do for the most part is you should be able to just push it out with a flathead. Okay, so you're gonna keep the face of it there. This plate comes off. So plate goes up and then the two pins, the link, there we go. It's gonna take a little bit of effort because now you have to pull it taut with holding it in place. There we go. Tensioner is doing something. I don't know exactly what it's doing, but it's doing its best. So master link, get it in place. Usually a flathead, you can just pop it in. There you go. All right, looks like that's it for a quick assembly. All right, it goes in here. So the engine just sits on the plate and you end up using these additional, I think these are also M8 bolts. Give it a little wiggle. All right, so minor problem. This quality leaves a lot to be desired. So this is bent pretty good. So all I'm doing is I'm just putting a wrench in here, holding the bike as I straighten it, and it's bent both ways. Could I use a flathead? Maybe, but last time I did that, it broke. Good. All right, now we put it back together. Let's try this again. Okay, so you'll see the engine slips and slides around there. So there's gonna be a bolt that ends up holding this one in here. Come on. Like, even these bolts, there's so much like slag in them from the machining process. Just absolute garbage quality. Okay, how do I fix this? I grab impact with the 12 mil, put the bolt in a vise, send it. Crispy and crunchy, but it still works. Better. I don't even know why I'm following the instructions. These instructions are shows to you to use the washer. Washer doesn't fit. Now I want to get these, of course it's all loose. I want to get these in ballpark, so let's give them a measure. 3/4, definitely over 3/4. So you tighten them and it'll center the rear axle. So it should be longer now. Yeah, now they at least match. So similar to a motorcycle, what you do is you have these two nuts. This second one's just a locking one. So when you adjust this, you can loosen it off and give it a tap and it'll slide the whole assembly forward. And if you want to snug it up and tighten the chain, same thing. opposite way. Master link. I'm sure there's an easier way to fucking do this. All right, let's try this again. Master link. There. Okay, so we're gonna have 2 points of adjustment here and sliding the engine forward. So what we're trying to do is, now that we know that this is roughly in line, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push the motor forward to take the slack out of the chain and give it a snug. That's pretty good. All right, so let's take a gander. Not reading instructions, of course. That is nowhere near enough grease. I don't even know what kind of grease this is. Heavy duty grease. All right. I don't know why I'm doing this here. On this episode of Next Level Rides, watch how much I can struggle. Oh, it doesn't even fit. It's not even remotely close. There's like a ½ inch that I need to make up. All right, I give up. I tried to do this on the workbench, all nice. Nope. So the big issue I'm seeing is that this wheel, between this end and this end, is a lot wider than the forks themselves. It actually looks like the forks are bent. Yeah, this one's actually bent inward. Nope, it's out to lunch. Okay, so I sort of got it fixed here. So what I did is I had a long piece of essentially rebar and 2 bolts. So what I did is I put 2 bolts on the one ear so that it would hold it in place. And then the other bolt I had put on the inside of this side of the fork. So what I did is I held the one with a wrench and I tightened the other one. And what it did is it slowly ended up opening the ears. So it should be all right. Once the wheel's all bolted in, should be relatively straight, but I just gotta fight getting this washer in. Should have went just a hair wider, but that's okay. All right, good enough, whatever. Okay, because I can't leave well enough alone, what we're doing here is we're gonna try and remove the governor. Now, normally the best way to remove the governor is to actually remove this entire governor arm here. So it actually goes into the block and it's kind of like a secondary clutch. So when the RPM gets high enough, what it does is it'll actually push back on this arm. So it starts to push a rod that's inside the block and it'll actually push the throttle closed. Obviously, we don't want that. So this whole governor arm assembly kind of crap is going to need to go. So when this is fully closed here, the throttle body is going to be closed and this way it'll be open. So what we need to do is we need to manipulate it with a bit of tension. So obviously if we push this here, that would end up being the throttle open. So the governor, my understanding, will pull it closed. I don't know, this is kind of witchcraft and I don't fully understand it, but what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this entire governor arm. And we're going to put a spring here and mount it somewhere on the backside. I haven't decided where. May just run it to here, right at the bottom of the fuel tank mount, and see where I'm going to put it. So let's get this going. And a little spring here. And over. Now, you'll see this little spring here is holding it in. So be gentle with it. Pull it out. And that's the governor bypassed. Yeah, I guess this would end up being a bypass. So the only tricky thing is the throttle would be connected right here. So you put the wire through and then you tighten the screw down. That'll end up being where you connect the throttle. So we'll have to makeshift or MacGyver something here. Long story short, you'll end up wanting to put the spring here and then pull tension on it somewhere just so it ends up being fully closed. I'll figure out where I'm going to put that. The arm here has its own little spring. I'm actually not sure what that's for. It cracks it open just a hair to return it. So where are we gonna mount it? Maybe we can mount it right over there. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the spring right onto the actual arm right here. And I'm gonna loosen this bolt where this ground is, put it around, and then snug her up. Can I just do that? Can I? No, that's too easy. But can I though? No. Can I? No, that'd be way too easy. But I want to do it. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Can't find my side cutters, but I can find my Dremel. Let's cut it. Okay, so my plan is to pinch it where I want it. Right there. And then just give it a quick bend. Bend it at a 90, and then test it. Is it gonna work all right? I think so. So you actually see where we bent it at a 90. Because it does need a little bit more tension, we'll just bend it back on itself. So you'll end up getting something like this. So we'll see if that's gonna actually fit nice. You know, that looks pretty good. Realistically, I think that's gonna work out quite nice. You can see where it's locked the throttle, and then for me, I like more tension. I find that it's easier to modulate the throttle, but this way you can see that it's not actually binding up on anything. Looks good. Let's just make sure that it's not limiting the travel. Nope, the bottom's out right there, fully open, almost fully closed. So I'm gonna leave the airbox off until I actually get the throttle done. But for the throttle here, we're gonna end up running it probably through here. So it's gonna loop down under through here. And then the cable I'm probably just gonna put right through that. So I think this one, that would be the longest run. So I think it's actually gonna run, excuse you. So what I think I might do is for the throttle, is I'm gonna run it up and on the frame there, just so it's kind of tucked out of the way. So right here, there's a Phillips head screw. So for the Phillips head screw, holy, they crank that one down. All right, so we loosen the screw, and this is what's gonna hold down the throttle. We don't want it kinked up or anything. Should be able to just push it through. Now, this is gonna have to go a little ways. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fix it here. Let's temporarily snug this one down. Yeah, that's good. So a couple things we need to factor is the gas tank going back and the air box. So that's why I have this all taken off. Because as soon as I start putting this in, as you can kind of see, there's no way to, whoa, hey, that was cool. No way to screw around with it. All right. What am I gonna do here? So first thing I'm thinking is, now some people, what they'll do is they'll actually take the wire and they'll push it through here and then loop it back on itself, and they could do a zip tie or something. What I wanna try to do is not do that. So what I could probably do is I could put a crimp here. So realistically, if I hold it there, it's gonna pull the throttle. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this cable through. I'm gonna put crimp the little piece on here, and it should be okay. So let's give this a shot. Probably isn't the way that I would want to do this, but it's holding pretty good. Let's give it one more crimp. So that's it. Yeah, it's crimped pretty good. So really all you do is just push it back. All right, so throttle all the way out, no slack. Let me snug this one down. So you don't need to crank it down, but you want there to be just the slightest little bit. But as soon as you pull the throttle, you'll see where it pulls it. There's obviously a bit of a flaw here. When you're pulling on the governor arm, you can pull it a little bit further, and it does start to bend this because it's not much thicker than a paper clip. So gotta be a bit cautious with that. But as soon as you let off, the stiffer spring snaps it back. There's a little bit of play in here, which is perfect. Exactly what we want to see. So grab a 7mm, just make sure this is snug. Yep, all right. So now it's gonna be time to start reassembling. So we're gonna put bottom of the air box, the air filter. Now because the air comes in each one of these ports, the air filter sat like this. I don't think there's much of a difference. I'm just gonna turn it sideways because it makes the most sense for the air to come up, hit the side of the filter. Part of me is really wanting to cut this tab down, but I'm gonna leave it for now. All right, so the air filter has a wing nut. So that holds the filter in place. And then air box. There's no left or right. Air filter and maintenance. Don't care. Let's put the sticker on the inside because I don't want to look at it. Same thing, wing nut. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, but that's the air box. So now we're gonna start with the gas tank. I have the muffler here. I don't know if it was shown, but kind of curious how quiet this is gonna end up being. And then just a graphite ring. So keep that here. All right, so for this, we have the tiny little fuel line here. So it was a little bit tricky because I had this little ring. Here's my teeny tiny pliers. So this wasn't the easiest thing to deal with. If it wasn't in such an awkward spot, or if the hose was just a little bit longer, I'd be able to pinch this with my fingers. Well, let's give it a shot. So now it's pointing up. So when I tried to take it off, it was pointing down and I couldn't get the hose on it. So that'll go to the little port right here. Okay, so first and foremost, we try and, holy, it's like I'm working on the BMW all over again. All right, so I did it off screen. But I ended up getting the tank back just because I had to modify the throttle just a little bit. So it's all put back together, but gets full throttle, which is nice. It doesn't bind or anything. Now we're gonna move on to the brake. All right, so this one, I'm kind of assuming, but you had to take the cable all the way out from the front because, I don't know if it's gonna show up, there's a little eyelet here. So you need to actually put this through the eyelet and it doesn't fit. There's probably a reason why this wasn't in part of the instructions. What are you supposed to do if it doesn't fit? It's not really even close. So the biggest thing we're trying to do is there's this little edge here that's supposed to sit right against, I'm assuming, so that the brake will work. What if none of this fits? What are you expected to do here? All right, so attempt number 2. So I'm sure there's supposed to be a notch in here so that I can run the brake cable. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the good old cutting disc, cut a notch in there so that I can run it. Get going, cable. You got places to be. Up through here. Yep. I think it's a safe assumption that that's how it's supposed to be. It just needs bolt-on tools. A 12, a 14, and a Phillips. Yeah. All right, and the cable up and around here. So we'll slide it in here. There we go. Bottom that out for now. So there's the adjustment up here. All right, let's see if I can get this put back now. Spring. So this pin is the tricky one. So this pin you have to kind of hold where it needs to be and then bend the brake line around it. And then you got the nut on the back. So that'll end up being the adjustment nut. Okay, let's give the brake a test. It's moving. So it rolls pretty good. So what you're doing is you're testing the brake. So you can see when I pull it, it's actually quite good. But there's a lot of slack up here. So we still need to take some slack out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull all the slack from the cable all the way out. I'm gonna snug the nut up, slide it back. Let's see if that helps. It's helped, but not enough. All right, so easy fix. Right here where I ended up putting it through the subframe, what we ended up changing was right where this notch is, I put that nub on the opposite side. So now when you put it through, this little nut on the back will actually pull tension. So when you end up pulling the brake, you can actually see that it actuates quite a bit better now. So what I'll do is I'll zip tie the cables out of the way. They're short, there's no way to get around it, but it works good now. So if you end up finding it's a little bit loose, you can end up turning this nut. It's kind of like an eccentric bolt. So it has a half moon cut into it, so it'll turn and sit right against this to keep it from rattling. Much better. So we're gonna do the same thing for the throttle cable. So this one here, I think what we're gonna try and do is have it just up and over like this. That might make the most sense. Same thing at the front. We're gonna pin it here, just make sure it has enough play either direction. Should be good. Now for the throttle cable, you just want a bit of a gradient slope. So this will be all right. Yeah, works perfect. Spark plug boot. Let's make sure that spark plug's tightened properly. All right, spark plug's tight, and you know what we're using here. Don't fill the boot, give it a big lump, and then it'll coat the plug as it goes on. Weird, this one has like this little handle. Now I gotta do the exhaust. So the exhaust on here, the pipe is just circle. So on the head, it's this weird type shape. So we'll throw the gasket back on, like so. So you can end up making yourself a homemade exhaust if you wanted to. Wow, that fits like garbage. I'll probably end up doing that. Depending on how much I like this thing, I have a few ideas as to what might be next. These little bendy extensions are nice. So they don't allow you to go crazy with the torque, and it gets into the spot. So you can see the extension stops. I'm not sure exactly how much it ends up being torqued to, but if I had to guess, let's see. My calculation, oh yeah, it's not crazy. It's like 10, 15 foot-pounds. So for the kill switch, you're gonna end up seeing a green and a black wire. My understanding is because this one has already a kill switch, we're gonna want it up and on the handlebars. So because it has that, we're gonna replace this ground with this one. I mean, realistically, we could just leave it and add this one. This one will go to the only bullet connector here. When you end up pulling this one out, right there, so that's the male side, all you're gonna do is you're gonna plug the female side into it, and then this one goes to the ignition coil. So when you end up turning it off, what it does is it'll ground and it'll kill the engine, and then we'll just tuck it all away. All right, so on these engines, you'll actually see there's one filled plug here, and there's one tucked under there. It looks like these are the drain plugs. Funny enough, there's actually two of them. I'd imagine the reason they put two is probably because you don't know how the engine's gonna be sitting. So we're gonna use the rear drain plug and the front fill just because they're easier to get to. So these engines, a lot of the time, they're actually gonna be shipped with oil in them. I don't know what the hell's in there. So I'm gonna drain it, and I'm gonna use some good old Kirkland 5W30. Well, at least it's full synthetic, so there's that. Came from some of those fancy dinosaurs. So let's crack the drain bolt and see what's in there. All right, what size is it? 10. Open the drain plug. What's in there? Nothing. All right, so we're gonna put the drain plug back in, and we're gonna flip to the other side and we're gonna fill it. All right, to make life easier, we're gonna use some good old 13W36. If you didn't follow along for the BMW one, this is a concoction of a bunch of different oils. It says 1540 here, it's about 1337, we'll call it. You wanna try and get the bike relatively level, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my file underneath it, somewhat level, so we can get somewhat of an accurate idea. Now it doesn't take too much, so I'm giving it a bloop at a time, and I'm just looking for it to spill out. Better yet, this one has a dipstick, so let's be fancy and see if it works. Halfway. There we go. All right, so you can see it's overfilled. Well, not overfilled, that's actually where it's supposed to be. We're gonna put this back in. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen off this big old axle. So one side is 18 mil, this side I don't know, 7/8. Oh. So first thing is to loosen it up. So we're gonna loosen this axle nut, just a hair, doesn't have to be too crazy. Just enough so I can see a little bit of play and it's not spinning the other side. So here, it's a long bolt that goes through the rear axle. Now, we got the brake all situated and that's fine, but here, this is the adjustment. So we need to adjust the slack on the chain and to center the rear axle so it doesn't end up dogtailing. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. First things first, we're gonna loosen these nuts and copy paste on the other side. So what I've done in my motorcycle days is I'll measure from the edge of the bolt to the flange here. So here, it's looking like between 1/2 and 3/4. One tick above 1/2, one tick below 3/4. And here, so same. So because we need about 1 centimeter of deflection in the chain, what we're gonna do is we're gonna aim for this to be 1.5. So all you're gonna do is tap on this, and you can't see it, but it's actually shifting the axle. So that is 1.5. Okay, so because I wanna aim for 1.5, we're gonna snug up the 110 mil together. Nothing crazy, just a little bit of snug. So it's close, about 1 mil. Okay, so finger tight the bottom one. The back one, what it's gonna do is you're just gonna give it just a little bit of snug. If you end up tightening this one, it's gonna end up pulling the axle. Now we're gonna jump to the other side. So you can see with just the slightest of adjustments, the chain has a ton of slack on it now. So we're gonna have to go the other way. gonna take a little bit of playing around to get this proper, so don't worry too much. So I try to give it about a quarter turn, remeasure, 1 1/4 now. Way too loose. Because it's way too loose, I'm gonna give it, let's give it about another quarter. Perfect. All right, for the chain deflection, so if you picture on the top here, if the chain deflects in the body of itself on the loosest part, perfect. All right, now that we got it exactly where we want it, tighten the rear axle. Now you're gonna want this quite tight. Make sure you put your purse down and give it a snug. All right, so this 10 mil, now we can bottom out. You don't need to crank on it. It's just gonna be snug. Spin the other one down, snug. That's it, that side's done. All right, after screwing around with it for more hours than I would like to admit off screen, just adjusting certain things like the throttle and the brake and stuff like that. Tolerances are terrible with one of these. Like no matter what I did after adjusting the rear axle, I would adjust it, the wheel wouldn't spin, or it would drag on the drum brake, or any number of issues. The one thing to consider with this is, if you have OCD, it's going to aggravate the ever-living hell out of you. I'm accepting that it's not perfect. So, rear axle straight, it's dragging on the drum brake, it'll eventually self-clearance itself. It's okay for now. So, chain's where I need it to be. It's gonna end up needing an adjustment regardless after the first drive. So right now it's not really any tension, so it should be okay. So we're just gonna fill it. I think we're ready to start it. Please don't spill, please don't spill, please don't spill. Throttle on.
What's going on, man?
It's kind of quick. I didn't expect it to be that much torque.
All right, 30-second review.
It's good. The frame itself is but the motor seems to be doing good without the governor. It's actually kind of quick. It's really sketchy. Like you hit a bump and you can feel it kind of like all over. Well, that's good. I guess that wraps up this one. So, as always, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next stupid project.